The fluorescent lights of Sterling Global headquarters buzzed overhead as Maya Chen stepped off the elevator onto the 37th floor. Her black heels were silent against the carpet as she moved through the pre-dawn darkness, switching on lights and adjusting blinds with the precision of someone who had performed this ritual 1,000 times before. 4 years. She had given 4 years to this company, arriving before sunrise and leaving long after the cleaning crew finished their rounds. Her fingers had typed countless emails, organized infinite schedules, and solved problems that would have brought lesser assistants to tears. And for what? A paycheck that barely covered her mother's medical bills and a boss who looked through her like she was made of glass. Maya paused at the window, watching the city slowly wake beneath her. Somewhere out there, people were living lives that did not revolve around Adrian Sterling's impossible demands. People who slept through the night without dreaming of spreadsheets and conference calls. She pressed her palm against the cool glass and closed her eyes. By 7:30, she had prepared everything exactly as Adrian preferred. His espresso sat at precisely the right temperature, dark and bitter like his personality. The morning briefings were arranged in order of priority, each document flagged with colored tabs she had developed specifically for his reading style. He never noticed the system. He never noticed anything about her. The elevator chimed at 8 sharp, and Adrian Sterling emerged like a thunderstorm given human form. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his charcoal suit fitting his frame as though it had been sewn directly onto his body. Dark hair swept back from angular features that belonged on magazine covers rather than boardrooms. His gray eyes were cold as winter steel, cutting through anyone unfortunate enough to meet his gaze. He walked past Maya without acknowledgement. Not a nod. Not a glance. 4 years of devoted service, and she remained invisible. The morning progressed as every morning did. Maya fielded calls from anxious investors and soothed ruffled executives. She rescheduled meetings 3 times to accommodate Adrian's shifting moods and managed to prevent a minor catastrophe when the catering company sent the wrong lunch order for a client meeting. No one thanked her. No one even noticed. By 2 in the afternoon, the main conference room was filled with investors and board members for the quarterly presentation. Maya stood near the door, tablet in hand, ready to assist with anything needed. She had spent 3 sleepless nights preparing these materials, checking every number twice, ensuring every slide was perfect. Adrian moved through the presentation with characteristic confidence, his voice smooth and commanding. He was magnetic when he wanted to be, capable of charming millions from cautious investors with nothing more than a well-timed smile. Then Harold Pierce, the oldest board member, raised a question about expansion projections. Adrian reached for the relevant document. It was not in his folder. Maya's blood turned to ice. She had prepared that document. She had placed it in the secondary folder herself, had checked it 3 times before the meeting began. "It seems we are missing critical data," Adrian said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. His gray eyes swept the room before landing on Maya with crushing weight. "Perhaps my assistant can explain why documentation I specifically requested has failed to materialize." Every face turned toward her. Maya felt heat rush to her cheeks as she stepped forward. "Sir, I prepared that document. It should be in the secondary folder beneath the quarterly summary." Adrian did not bother to look. "If it were there, I would have found it. This is basic organizational competency, and you have failed spectacularly." From the corner of her eye, Maya caught Victoria Drake smirking. The senior director had always resented Maya's proximity to Adrian, had always looked for opportunities to undermine her. Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. Victoria had removed the document. "Sir, if you would simply check the folder," Maya began. "Enough." Adrian's hand cut through the air like a blade. "I do not have time for excuses. Incompetence of this level is simply unacceptable." He turned back to the investors with a dismissive wave. "I apologize for my staff's inadequacy." Something inside Maya shattered. 4 years of silence. For years of swallowed pride and stolen credit. For years of working herself to exhaustion for a man who could not be bothered to learn her name. Last week he had called her Mia. The week before, he had referred to her as the assistant while she stood 3 feet away. The accumulated weight of every ignored achievement became suddenly unbearable. Maya walked calmly to the conference table. She picked up the secondary folder Adrian had dismissed without examination and found the document exactly where she had placed it. She held it up for the entire room to see. The expansion analysis you requested, sir. Exactly where I said it would be. Silence fell like a hammer. No one spoke to Adrian Sterling this way. No one corrected him, especially not in front of investors worth hundreds of millions. His gray eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. Watch yourself. The warning should have stopped her. Every survival instinct screamed for her to apologize, to retreat, to become invisible once more. But Maya was done being invisible. Watch myself. She laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. For 4 years, I have given everything to this company. I arrive before dawn and leave after midnight. I have sacrificed my health, my relationships, everything to make you look competent in rooms exactly like this one. She grabbed her tablet from the table, the device she had used to manage his entire professional existence. And you cannot even remember my name. Adrian rose slowly, his height suddenly imposing. You are making a scene. Good. Maya's voice cracked with years of suppressed fury. Because I am finished being your shadow. I am finished being invisible. I quit. She threw the tablet. It struck his chest with a satisfying thud before clattering to the polished table, leaving a visible mark on his pristine white shirt. The gasp that rippled through the room was almost comical. Adrian stood frozen, his expression caught somewhere between shock and barely contained rage. Maya turned to leave, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She had made it 4 steps when his voice stopped her cold. You are not going anywhere. She spun to face him, ready to fight, ready to scream if necessary. But the look in his eyes was not anger. It was something else entirely. Something intense and unexpected that made her breath catch in her throat. Excuse me? Adrian stepped closer, ignoring the tablet-shaped mark on his shirt, ignoring the stunned investors, ignoring everything except her. When he spoke, his voice was low enough that only she could hear. I see you now. Maya stared at him, certain she had misheard. What did you just say? His gray eyes burned into hers with an intensity that made her skin prickle. I said I see you. And I am not letting you disappear. The room remained frozen around them, but Maya barely noticed. All she could see was the man before her, the man who had ignored her for 4 years, now looking at her as though she were the only person who had ever truly existed. You have lost your mind, she whispered. Perhaps. Something shifted in his expression, vulnerability cracking through the ice. But you are the first real thing I have seen in years. Maya did the only thing she could think of. She ran. She left Adrian Sterling standing in a room full of witnesses, his shirt marked and his empire shaken. She did not know it yet, but nothing would ever be the same again. Maya's hands trembled as she packed her desk into a single cardboard box. A small jade plant from her mother, a photograph of her family from happier times, a worn notebook filled with 4 years of meticulous notes. Her entire professional life reduced to items she could carry in one arm. The elevator descent felt eternal. Her reflection stared back from the mirrored walls, and she barely recognized the woman she saw. There was fire in her dark eyes, color in her cheeks that had been absent for years. She had finally done something for herself. The terror of unemployment gnawed at her stomach, but beneath it hummed something unexpected. Liberation. Manhattan swallowed her whole as she pushed through the lobby doors. Taxis screamed past, pedestrians rushed by with their own urgent destinations, and the city continued spinning as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Her phone began buzzing before she reached the corner. Unknown numbers, office extensions, messages flooding her screen in waves. She turned it off and kept walking. 3 days passed in silence. Maya stayed in her small Brooklyn apartment, updating her resume and trying not to think about the bills piling up on her kitchen counter. Her mother's next treatment was due in 2 weeks, and savings would only stretch so far. The flowers arrived on day 4. White orchids, elegant and expensive, with a card that read simply, "I was wrong. Please let me explain." As Maya threw them in the trash, day 6 brought a handwritten letter delivered by courier. The penmanship was precise, almost architectural, and the words were carefully chosen. Adrian apologized for his behavior, not just the presentation incident, but for years of blindness. He asked for nothing except the chance to make amends. She read it twice before tearing it into pieces. Meanwhile, Adrian Sterling sat in his corner office staring at a wall of windows that suddenly felt like a prison. The city stretched beneath him, millions of lives moving in patterns he had never bothered to understand. His phone showed 17 missed calls from board members wanting to discuss the incident. His email overflowed with damage control requests from the public relations team. None of it mattered. He pulled up Maya's personnel file for the 100th time. 4 years of performance reviews, all exemplary. 4 years of overtime logged without complaint. 4 years of problems solved before they reached his desk. How had he missed her? David Chen, his chief operations officer and oldest friend, appeared in the doorway. "The whole building is talking. Human Resources wants to know if you are planning legal action against her." Adrian did not look up from the file. "For what? She assaulted you in front of investors. She threw a tablet at my chest because I treated her like furniture for 4 years." Adrian finally met his friend's eyes. "If anything, she showed remarkable restraint." David stepped inside and closed the door. "What is going on with you? I have never seen you like this." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "When Maya confronted me in that room, she looked at me like I was a person. Not a fortune. Not a connection. Not a means to an end. She looked at me like I was a deeply flawed human being capable of causing real harm, and that is a good thing. It is the first honest thing anyone has given me in years." David sat down heavily. "You have lost your mind, perhaps." Adrian turned back to the window. "But I need to find her. I need her to understand that I finally see what I have been missing." The search proved more difficult than expected. Maya had cleared her desk thoroughly, left no forwarding information, and her emergency contact led only to a disconnected hospital line. Adrian spent 3 days following dead ends before finally locating her building through her last paycheck deposit records. He drove to Brooklyn himself, parking his black sedan among modest brownstones that had never seen a vehicle worth more than his suit. The neighborhood was humble but well kept, window boxes overflowing with flowers, children playing on stoops. Maya emerged from the corner market carrying groceries. She wore faded jeans and a simple white blouse, her black hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in her usual severe bun. She looked younger this way. Softer. Real. She spotted him immediately. Her expression hardened into stone. "You have got to be kidding me." Adrian stepped away from his car, hands raised in surrender. 5 minutes. That is all I am asking. You had 4 years to talk to me. Maya's voice could have frozen the summer air. Why should I give you 5 more minutes? Because I was wrong. The words came out rougher than he intended. Because I spent 4 years looking through you when I should have been looking at you. Because you deserved better than what I gave you, and I need you to know that I understand that now. Maya stared at him, grocery bag clutched against her chest like armor. The afternoon sun caught the angles of her face, highlighting cheekbones he had somehow never noticed, dark eyes that held depths he had never bothered to explore. Understanding does not fix anything that I know. Adrian took a careful step closer. But I am hoping it might be a start. A start toward what exactly? He did not have an answer. For the first time in his adult life, Adrian Sterling stood before another person without a strategy, without an agenda, without the faintest idea what he wanted except that it somehow involved the woman in front of him. Maya shook her head slowly. Go home. Go back to your tower and your millions and your perfect life. I have nothing you need. She walked past him toward her building, and he let her go. Pushing would only make things worse, but as he climbed back into his car, Adrian made a decision. He would not give up. He would not disappear back into his comfortable isolation. Whatever it took, however long it required, he would prove to Maya Chen that he had finally learned to see. The game had changed, and for the first time in years, Adrian Sterling felt truly alive. 2 weeks after their confrontation in Brooklyn, Maya started her new job. The Riverside Community Foundation operated from a converted warehouse in Queens, its mission focused on providing resources for families facing medical debt. The salary was half what she had earned at Sterling Global, but the work meant something. Every spreadsheet she organized, every donor she contacted, every event she planned would help families like her own. Her supervisor, a warm woman named Patricia with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, welcomed her without questions about her previous employment. The small team embraced her immediately, sharing lunches and stories and the easy camaraderie that had been absent from her corporate life. Maya began to breathe again. She did not know that the foundation's sudden financial stability came from an anonymous donation large enough to fund operations for 3 years. She did not know that Adrian Sterling had spent hours researching her background, discovering her mother's illness, understanding the weight she carried. He gave without expectation. Without even leaving his name. It was David who finally confronted him about it. You donated $2 million to a charity you have never heard of because your former assistant works there? Adrian continued signing documents without looking up. It is a worthy organization. You are stalking her. I am helping from a distance. There is a difference. David dropped into the chair across from Adrian's desk. What is your endgame here? You cannot buy her forgiveness. I am not trying to buy anything. Adrian finally set down his pen. I am trying to become someone worth forgiving. The changes at Sterling Global began slowly. New policies emerged regarding employee recognition. Quarterly bonuses extended to administrative staff. A wellness program launched with genuine resources rather than corporate platitudes. The business press noticed. Articles appeared questioning whether the notoriously cold Adrian Sterling had experienced some kind of transformation. He declined all interviews. Maya noticed too. Rebecca Torres, her former colleague and closest friend from Sterling Global, called with updates disguised as gossip. He completely restructured the assistant compensation program. Everyone got raises. Significant ones. Maya stirred her tea without responding. And he fired Victoria Drake. That got her attention. What? Apparently he discovered she had been sabotaging other employees for years. Someone finally had the courage to report her after seeing what happened to you. Rebecca's voice carried wonder. Maya, he held a company-wide meeting and publicly apologized for fostering a toxic environment. Adrian Sterling. Apologizing. Maya set down her cup. People do not change that fundamentally. Maybe they do when they finally have a reason. 3 weeks later, Maya was leaving the foundation office when she found Adrian waiting outside. He wore casual clothes this time, dark jeans and a gray sweater that softened his usual severity. He looked almost approachable. Before you say anything, Adrian began, I know I promised to give you space. But I have something I need to tell you, and then I will leave you alone if that is what you want. Maya crossed her arms. Talk. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small envelope. This belongs to you. She opened it carefully. Inside was a check made out to her mother's hospital, covering the full remaining balance of her medical debt. Maya's hands began to shake. I did not do this to buy your forgiveness, Adrian said quietly. I did this because you should never have had to carry that weight alone. Because while you were working 18-hour days for me, you were also supporting your mother through something impossible. And I never once asked if you were okay. Tears burned behind her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. Why do you care? Her voice cracked despite her efforts. Why now? Adrian was silent for a long moment. My father worked himself to death building Sterling Global. Heart attack at 53. I was 22 when I took over, and I swore I would be different. Stronger. I built walls so high that I forgot there were people on the other side. He met her eyes with painful honesty. When you threw that tablet and looked at me like I was finally visible to you, something cracked. All my success meant nothing because I had become exactly what my father warned me against. A machine wearing human skin. Maya studied him. The afternoon light revealed details she had never noticed during their years of proximity. Fine lines around his eyes suggesting exhaustion. A slight tremor in his hand speaking to nerves he was struggling to hide. Vulnerability beneath the armor. He was telling the truth. I do not know how to trust you, she admitted. I know. Teach me how to earn it. They stood in silence as the city hummed around them. Maya thought about the choices that had led her here. The years of invisibility. The moment of rebellion. The unexpected aftermath. There is a coffee shop around the corner, she finally said. They make terrible espresso, but the pastries are good. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Hope, fragile and uncertain. I would like that. They walked together through the autumn evening, two people carrying wounds they were only beginning to understand. The path ahead remained unclear, but for the first time, Maya allowed herself to imagine it might lead somewhere worth reaching. The walls were starting to crumble. And neither of them was ready for what would emerge from the rubble. The charity gala glittered beneath crystal chandeliers as Manhattan's elite gathered to write checks and be seen writing them. Maya smoothed her borrowed dress, emerald silk that her friend Rebecca had insisted she wear, and tried to remember why she had agreed to attend. The Riverside Foundation received an invitation, Patricia had explained. Our anonymous donor specifically requested that we send a representative. It would be rude to refuse. Maya had not connected the dots until she walked through the ballroom doors and spotted Adrian Sterling across the room. Their eyes met instantly. He looked devastating in his tailored black suit, but something had changed since their coffee shop conversation 3 weeks ago. The ice had melted from his gaze. The rigid set of his shoulders had softened. He smiled when he saw her, genuine and warm, and Maya felt her carefully constructed defenses tremble. They had been meeting regularly. Coffee that turned into dinner that turned into walks through Central Park as autumn painted the trees in fire. Adrian listened when she talked about her mother's improving health, her brother's college applications, her dreams of someday starting her own foundation. He shared his own struggles with isolation, his growing realization that wealth without connection was just expensive loneliness. She was starting to see him. Really see him. Adrian crossed the ballroom toward her, ignoring the socialites attempting to capture his attention. His focus remained fixed on Maya with an intensity that made her skin warm. You look beautiful, he said simply. You clean up reasonably well yourself. He laughed, the sound surprising her. She had never heard him laugh during 4 years at Sterling Global. Dance with me? Maya hesitated. Every eye in the room would watch them. The gossip columns would explode with speculation. Her quiet anonymity would evaporate. Adrian extended his hand. Let them talk. I stopped caring about their opinions the day you threw that tablet at my chest. She took his hand. The orchestra swelled as they moved onto the dance floor. Adrian held her closer than strictly proper, his palm warm against her lower back, his breath stirring her hair. I need to tell you something, he murmured. Maya tilted her head to meet his eyes. What? I have been trying to become worthy of you. Trying to prove that I have changed. But the truth is, I am terrified. Of what? Of this. His hand tightened on hers. Of wanting something I cannot control. Of caring about someone who has every reason to walk away. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Adrian. I love you. The words came out rough, almost broken. I know it is too soon. I know I have not earned the right to say it. But I cannot pretend anymore. You are the first real thing I have wanted in longer than I can remember. The music faded to background noise. The glittering crowd disappeared. There was only Adrian, vulnerable and exposed, waiting for her verdict. Maya rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, a question asked without words. Then Adrian's arms tightened around her, pulling her closer, and the question became an answer. He kissed her like she was oxygen and he had been drowning for years. She kissed him back with all the fire she had suppressed for so long. When they finally separated, both breathing unsteadily, the ballroom had gone quiet. Maya became aware of hundreds of eyes watching them. Cameras flashing. Whispers spreading like wildfire. She did not care. Take me somewhere private, she breathed. Adrian's eyes darkened. Are you certain? I have never been more certain of anything. They left through a side entrance, abandoning propriety and expectation. Adrian's car waited outside, and the drive to his penthouse passed in charged silence. His hand rested on her thigh, thumb tracing circles that sent electricity through her nervous system. The elevator to his apartment felt endless. The moment his door closed behind them, Adrian pressed her against it. His mouth found hers with desperate hunger, hands sliding up her back to find the zipper of her dress. Maya. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. Tell me to stop and I will. She answered by pulling his shirt free from his trousers. They moved through his apartment in a tangle of discarded clothing and breathless kisses. His bedroom was vast and shadowed, moonlight spilling through floor-to-ceiling windows. Adrian lowered her onto silk sheets with reverence that made her ache. He explored her body with the same intensity he brought to everything, learning the places that made her gasp and the spots that made her moan. When he finally joined them together, Maya arched beneath him with a cry she did not recognize as her own. They moved in rhythm, two people finding connection in chaos. Adrian whispered her name like a prayer, and Maya shattered in his arms, pulling him over the edge with her. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the storm came 6 months later. Marcus Webb, Adrian's former business partner and long-standing rival, launched a coordinated attack against Sterling Global. Leaked documents appeared in major publications suggesting financial misconduct. Board members received anonymous packages containing fabricated evidence of fraud. Stock prices plummeted as investors fled. Adrian stood at his office window watching his empire burn. Maya found him there, still wearing the dress from their dinner reservation he had cancelled without explanation. She had driven to the office when he stopped answering his phone, security waving her through without question. Everyone knew who she was now. Talk to me, she said quietly. Adrian did not turn around. Marcus has spent 8 months building this case. He has forged documents, bribed former employees, constructed a narrative so convincing that even I would believe it if I did not know better. Can you prove the documents are fake? Eventually. But by the time the truth emerges, the damage will be done. Partners will have fled. Contracts will have dissolved. Everything I built will be rubble. Maya crossed to stand beside him. Then we rebuild. He finally looked at her. His gray eyes held exhaustion and something else. Fear. Not for himself, she realized, but for what he might drag her into. You should distance yourself from me. The scandal will consume everyone in my orbit. Maya took his hand. Do you remember what you said to me that day in the boardroom? After I threw the tablet?